everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Team Tim. And while I've got me streaming over here as well, let me turn that off so I'm not having the echo. Oh my gosh, we have 3 Tims. Will the real Tim please raise their hand?
We got to stop
Who
doing
is
this.
going to who? Oh my God, I'm going to be very confused, right? Just looks like we're having a problem streaming to Facebook. Well, fine, whatever. Okay, so yay. Welcome to the 3rd week of January. My gosh, the time keeps flying by. I'm Tim Golden, one of the founders here with Tim Schnur and Jesse of Team Tim Live. Also the founder of Compliance Scorecard, where we help MSPs operationalize and help with compliance. Jesse, how are you this week, my friend?
I am doing great. It's above 0 degrees. So in Minnesota, that's a win.
That's a win.
And yeah, I'm excited to have Tim on today. Met him a while back, and I just think he's someone in the channel who really has his head screwed on straight in terms of marketing and kind of how to approach that. So I'm excited to get into that today. But before we do that, real quickly, I'm Jesse Miller, PowerPSA, powerpsa.com. We help MSPs build security programs for scale and for profit.
And Mr. Tim Schnur.
Tim the third here, I guess. Taking. I was talking to Tim recently. Lots of great ideas. Customer acquisition, marketing, what's working, what's not working. Mm-hmm. Some of the things he's tried in the past that may not have worked out the way he wanted to. So you notice my title today, looking for channel opportunities. I've had a good run here. It's been a lot of great experience in the channel. So looking for the next great thing. My background, cybersecurity, intellectual property, risk management, a big word that keeps popping up. So if you're looking for, a role like that, let me know. But yeah, like I said, excited for today's show and talking about, we're going to have a couple hot button items here that, hopefully the comments, really jump on and onto this. So,
awesome.
Yeah. Tim, do you want to go? Tim, we're calling him Fitz. We're calling him Fitz today.
Call me Fitz. Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to join you guys today. I've never been a guest on a show or a podcast where there was 3 Tims on the call at the same time. So this is the first for me.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into client acquisition stuff. So you guys fire away, and we'll just
tell us a little bit about your background. So this is an opportunity for you to talk about yourself.
Yeah, cool. I mean, so my company Rialto Marketing. I am I'm a marketing consultant, advisor, and outsourced or part-time marketing executive. So I work with MSPs to help them grow faster without the commitment or cost of a full-time executive. So there's a lot of MSPs that are investing in marketing, and they're having a difficult time managing it because it's not their thing. And you can't manage something you don't understand. And that's the gap that we help fill. So
yeah. Awesome. So you mean I just can't push an easy button and have automatic things happen and the leads start flowing in? Because I was sold a couple of those programs as an MSP. Click the magic marketing button and poof, here comes the leads.
Yeah. If it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
Yeah. So yeah, just to get right into it, because I'm excited to get into the subject matter today. I wanted to ask you, Fitz. We talked about that, if it sounds too good to be true, what are some things you see that are mistakes MSPs are making as they begin their marketing journey and really start to get a full-fledged marketing program in place?
Yeah.
Before you answer that, I think we talked SMBs as well, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think this will work. I mean, most MSPs are small businesses. So yeah, jump in.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, Tim, because MSPs have these issues. It's no different than most small businesses. So, the biggest issue I see people have with marketing is they jump right to the tactics. They skip strategy. And the way I look at it is strategy is your fuel the tactics, the marketing are the marketing vehicles. And so
Right.
when you skip strategy, you have a vehicle and you have no fuel. And we all know that that's not going to work. And that's what ends up happening, right? People jump into tactics. They feel like, oh my God, I'm getting somewhere because I'm taking action. But then they get 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the road, and they're like, man, I'm doing all the marketing stuff, but none of this is working. Well, it's not working because you got no fuel. And so we have to take a step back, right? And jump into strategy. And people feel like, gosh, I'm slowing things down when I take the time to do strategy. But what you're really doing is slowing down a bit so you can go faster down the road.
I love that, because, and it's very poignant, or timely might be the better word, because I just saw a clip on LinkedIn this week that it kind of jumped out at me, and I don't know exactly who it was from, some marketing guru, so to speak, but he was talking about that, most of the time the issue is a business strategy problem and a product positioning problem, right? So if you don't have those two things right, how are you ever going to make marketing valuable? Because if you're just a commodity and you're just one in the line of many MSPs who is not standing out, who doesn't have a unique value prop, who isn't strategic in the way they're positioning their services, you're just going to get lined up along everyone else. They're going to pick the lowest costs and they're going to move right on. Right.
Yep. That's exactly right. And it's, when I look at marketing, I look at 3 critical areas: strategy, which I said is fuel, planning, where you're outlining the vehicles you're going to use, and then leadership, where you got to have a driver that's going to get those things to where they need to be. Those 3 things need to be in alignment. And within those 3 areas, there are common revenue roadblocks that we all face. And so we need to slowly and systematically remove those roadblocks so that we can get where we want to go. But strategy before tactics, first and foremost. The other big mistake I see is people feeling like they have to be everywhere, right? I mean, with marketing, we're all battling information overload. There's so many different marketing channels, so many tactics. And, it's like, oh my God, I have to have a website, and I have to have a podcast, and I have to have a YouTube channel. No, the way I look at it is most people are building off of referrals. If you want to scale and push through the referral ceiling, you have to have other marketing channels.
Yep.
But you need 3, maybe 4.
Yeah.
So it's, rather than riding the referral unicycle, when that tire goes flat, if you've got 3 or 4 channels, you're driving a car, or you're on a 3-wheeler. If one of those tires goes flat, you're still going to get where you want to go.
Yeah.
And it can even out those peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about, strategy over in tactics and stuff, right? And it kind of brings me back to some of my military days, right? So I'm the grunt in the foxhole, digging the foxhole, right? And I may know the overall mission, goals, and objective is to win the war, but we need the foxholes in order to get to the strategy, the overall picture of win the war, right? And so, us technicians as MSPs, we just want to keep digging foxholes because that's what we know how to do, and we're really good at ones and zeros and bytes and bits. So we need the generals, as you said, the leadership to kind of guide us. What is our strategy?
Yeah. And I love that too, because it goes exactly back, that analogy you're using, Tim, because it goes exactly back to what Fitz is talking about on, again, what's another piece of military strategy is being divided on too many fronts, right? You can't sustain pressure on all those fronts. And if you focus on 2 or 3 channels and maybe have one primary channel that you're really hitting hard and warming up a couple second channels, so that if that tire goes flat, so to speak, right, you can kind of flip over to those and then pour more effort into that, I think is just stellar advice.
Yeah, I love that. I'm marketing. I came in, 3-4 years ago, and some of these, even, VCs give marketing, they'll bring like a LinkedIn pro, or like, someone who's like a real social media pro on marketing. And I'm just shocked on how fast things are moving, and like how new tactics and strategies. This is even before quote AI kind of like revolution like we're seeing in like, I don't know, really seeing it really, you know, in the last month or two. But Tim, like, what are your thoughts? Like, what are some of the traditional tactics that, you know, I know AdWords was really big maybe 10 years ago. Is it just too expensive for small businesses? Like, give me, you know, talk about some of your guerrilla marketing tips, I'll call it.
Yeah. Well, so let me first say any of the marketing tactics can work, right? The ones that work best are the ones that resonate with you and how you view things, right? So for example, we're on video today, right? I love video content, but if I tell a client that you got to shoot video and they are terrified of it, they are going to do a horrible job. They're not going to do it consistently.
Right.
And consistency over time is the most important thing with marketing.
It's funny that you say that. It's funny that you say that. Did I just lose everybody?
No. It just that froze. Yeah.
Did Fitz freeze?
He's back.
All right.
We're good.
Fitz froze.
Yeah. So it's marketing is a marathon, not a sprint. And so you got to find the tactics that resonate with you.
Right.
Like I said, any of them can work. But here's one that I'll touch on because most MSPs I talk to are heavily referral based. Okay. But most of the MSPs I talk to that are building off of referrals have no system in place to consistently get referrals. It's just, how are you getting referrals? Well, we do great work and the referrals come in. Okay. What would happen if you just put a little fuel on that fire and put a system in place? Like, when are the best opportunities in the customer experience for us to actually ask for referrals? You know, can we create a referral program to incentivize referrals? That's low hanging fruit for so many MSPs. It's just sitting there that they're not taking advantage of.
I think that's interesting because I don't know that MSPs necessarily think about a referral system as marketing, right? But it really is.
It is,
right? Yeah. So that's just an interesting perspective.
Maybe we could back up, right? Because remember our audience, right? Remember the MSPs. Remember, we're already into tactics, right? Tech geeks are already digging foxholes. We're talking AdWords. We're talking this. We're talking that. Like, let's back up a little bit, right? And we have plenty of time today to get into digging foxholes, right? I want to talk strategy, right? Yeah. So I literally just kind of went through this with my marketing team a few minutes ago, right? And I'm looking at things, and Fitz, you can tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm learning as I go. I have dozens of books and things I've been learning, right? So one of the things that I was considering with our marketing team is we're going to take a quarter. So 3 months, we're going to focus on one topic, and everywhere and every message and everything that we do, that quarter is going to be that topic. So for this month, we're going to talk risk. And we're going to have social posts on risk, blog posts on risk, videos on risks, and use the tactics to talk about the strategic plan of, I don't know, becoming the expert on risk. Yeah, I'm never going to be the expert on risk. Yeah. But when I think of strategy, I think like that's one thing I think in a playbook, like pick a thing, do it for a quarter. And then fill out the tactics, fill out the places, fill out the ICP, as Jesse always talks about.
Yeah.
What else could I be thinking about?
Well, and I would argue too that is you're still almost at a higher level of tactics at that point, right? Because you're picking a quarter and you're doing something, right? That's that's really the operationalization of your strategy. So like, why do we talk about risk for a quarter? What's the reasoning behind that? So yeah, Tim, maybe just dig into like, how do you approach walking someone through that? I'm not asking you to give away your secret sauce, but just some high-level bullet points to think about, right?
Yeah. So I want to pull one thing that you just shared, Tim, that I think is super valuable.
Hold on.
Thinking of marketing planning in 90-day sprints, in my opinion, is the best way to approach it. Because marketing is changing. Our business are evolving quickly. Nobody puts together a 1-year plan that is the same at the end as it was at the beginning. And 1-year plans tend to be far too complex. and complexity just gets in the way of us getting to results. So 90-day sprints keeps things focused, and it's long enough to start seeing traction, but it's short enough where you can evaluate at the end of 90 days, make your adjustments and your course corrections, and then just wash, rinse, repeat. So I love that fact about what you're doing. From a strategic standpoint, when I think of marketing strategy, I think of three things. I think of your target market, who are you going to serve, and how are you going to serve those people? Then I think about your message to that market. What are you going to say to communicate your value, to differentiate yourself from the competition and attract and engage those people? And then the third thing is, what are your services and your offers look like? And are those a good match for what that market wants and needs?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's what when I talk strategy, those are the three things that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Everything from a marketing standpoint starts with your target market. Everything.
So let's break this down a little further, right? So I just said, yay, and thank you for confirming me. I mean, the zillions of books that I have not yet finished and only started on, a quarter, great. And we're going to talk about risk, great. Well, taking that a little further with your three key points there, right? Like, why risk? Well, because it's important, because it's this. Like, Simon Sinek, start with why, right? That is one of our why statements. Risk, governance, that is one of our why statements, right? So the strategic plan is to look at our core values and say, we want to educate MSPs, and we want to educate MSPs in these areas. Risk is one of them. So if I'm thinking from a strategic standpoint, our core value, educate and level up and shift left MSPs.
Yeah.
How does that? Okay. And then in that, we have risk, governance, compliance, all the other things. Great. So we're going to pick that off and then start to continue to drill down. Now, I'm hopefully not sharing your secret sauce, but this is how it's been working in my brain, trying to figure this out for the last decade.
And I think the
before
marketing
you all
strategy,
answer that, I just want to acknowledge there's a bunch of great questions coming in chat. Thank you everybody for popping them in there, Mike and Josh and everybody else. We'll get to those. So hang out.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, and you kind of backed up the strategy, but Tim and I was like, you don't realize, like, I came into the channel new. Like, we're talking channel, and I don't mean to make it channel specific right now, but so much of you kind of already know, like, what works. Same with Jesse, worked at an MSSP, BC, so kind of like, so you understand kind of where people go, right? Like, what are the social media channels? Like, what conferences are important? Like, and why are they important? Which people should you be following, right? Like, and
which Reddit channels should you actually listen to?
Oh man.
Yeah. What are some of these other, like, Discord, Slack, right? Like, and it's funny because I met Tim in a pitch it cohort, and like everyone was kind of sharing their secrets about like where some of the great places, to market. And it's no different, right, with small businesses, right, Tim? I'm sure that, like, you go to local conferences and Jesse talks about ICP, right? Like, if you're a VCSO that's working on law firms, like, what kind of conference are you going to go to, or what kind of, like, organizations are you going to join? So a lot of that, I think that, like, plays into strategy.
Absolutely.
Tim's talking more messaging, and that I want to get into that as well, right? Like, and I think messaging, I'm sure, and like, let's just jump into some of these questions, I guess. But
Well, I brought up this one about associations because you just mentioned that, Tim. Right?
Yeah.
So this is a great opportunity. Like, now we're digging foxholes.
I think it is more high level. Yeah.
Well, you know what? You are kind of going into the foxhole, but this is still a strategic element, in my opinion, which Tim just touched on, right? Like, once you know who your ideal client is, then you can start to identify where they're at, right? I call it an ideal client GPS. It's a list of where your ideal clients are. And doesn't mean you're going to be everywhere that you come up with on that list, but you know that when you join an association that's on that list, it's targeted. You're not talking to like a sea of small business owners. You're talking to the specific people that you want to target. So industry associations are a fantastic place to go, assuming that that's the industry association that you want to, be a part of, right?
Right.
So they're a great place to go. The biggest issue I see with people joining industry associations is again, it goes back to my comment earlier about short-term versus long-term.
Yeah.
Don't go to the first meeting expecting the leads to flood in. Like, you got to build these relationships. You got to get comfortable with the environment and start to, get out there and talk and meet people. So you have to do it consistently over time, but it's a very targeted way to get in front of an audience.
And you have to give a lot. If you have to give a lot of value, right? It's like give. The more you can give before you ask is always going to be better in your favor, right? So that's another piece to it. It's the sustained adding value. Adding value. And if you can get to a point where you're just adding value and someone finally comes up to you and says, hey, you know what? We have this problem. I'd like to get your opinion on it. Maybe we can work with you on it. That's the position you want to get to in those associations. I think. And another piece too, Tim, I want to just go back to this because before it flies out of my frenetic thinking here, is that, you talked about, how to focus on what channel is what's comfortable for you. And I think a lot of MSPs are like, well, how do I decide what my ICP is? How do I strategically position my business? Well, it's the same thing. You're in a unique place that you get to design your own adventure. You work with a couple client types, you have success, the work's interesting, you like the technology, that can be your ICP. Lean into that, right? One MSP that pops to mind of mine is somebody who focuses on SaaS startups, right? So to me, that's super interesting from a VCSO perspective because there's all sorts of interesting and complicated problems to solve. It's on the cutting edge a lot of times, and these people are young and hungry and working hard. And so it's hard chargers. That whole environment gets me fired up. And so that's something that I think this particular MSP is tapped into. And so that's their ICP. And then you start to lean into that. You start to build services around that. Your messaging starts to focus there and it becomes a waterfall. So I think it doesn't have to be this, super cerebral thing. It can be a feel thing almost. And then you start leaning into that and designing your own adventure as you go. Right. So I think that's important.
I love that. And let me just add on to that because most MSPs you don't need to reinvent the wheel here.
Right.
Where I typically start is with your existing and past client base. And it's the best place to, success leaves clues, right? And so, I call it the 3 power questions. You look at your existing and past client base and say, look, who did we work with that we loved working with? Who are our most profitable clients and who are we getting great results for? If you can work with people that check all 3 of those boxes day in, day out, like you're going to make a ton of money. You're going to love who you're working with and they're going to stay with you and they're going to want to refer you because you're getting great results for them. So that's the place to start.
Right.
And then you can look for commonalities within that group. So a while ago on my podcast, I interviewed an MSP that actually went through this process about 4 or 5 years ago. And he went through it and the consultant they were working with was like, did you realize that half of your clients are in the healthcare space? And they're like, we knew we were working with quite a few, but we really didn't think it was that many. And so they started to dig a little bit deeper and they're like, well, do you like these people? Are you making good money? Are they happy?
Right.
And they were like, yeah. And so they did exactly what you just said, Jesse. They leaned into the healthcare space. And when they did, everything changed for them from a marketing perspective. Things become much simpler when you focus. And, they went from not generating enough leads to generating plenty of leads. And it being much easier. It's not easier. It's simpler to generate those leads, right? There's work that's still involved, but focusing on a specific industry is not the only way to specialize, but I think it is one of the simplest places most MSPs can start.
That's great. Good stuff.
Yeah.
And
make yourself useful, make people think that you're useful, right? Right? Like you're creating value.
Well, it's a virtuous circle. We talk about the most profitable clients. Well, those are probably the clients you're most engaged with and you have the most fun working with, and where there's this shared vision and shared goal, right? That's always going to be a better environment. And think about before you owned a company or owned an MSP, what were the best jobs you had? It was the same thing. So it's just taking that and applying that concept.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I like what you said here, right? And I, I dumped that in our so I can pull it up on screen. And that is, look at your current client base, right? You're going to find those trends across that client base. Like, look for, engagement, profitability, vertical, things that you kind of talk about the same things across multiple clients, right?
Yeah.
Look for those commonalities across your existing customers. From there, you can, as Jesse said, start to build out a customer profile. Like for us, it's always been federal government work. It's always in our MSP. It's always been, regulated government contractors, because that's what we did and how we did it well. And once you master that ICP, then you can find adjacent ones, right?
And guess what, by the way, you get to find efficiencies in your operations too. And so you're doubling your margins there, because now you're doing things faster and better. Because it's
and we just talked about that in our peer group literally yesterday about doing an operational audit of your MSP. So not CIS, not Framework X, but actually like an operational audit on your MSP, at which point you're going to find inefficiencies and you're going to find things that you like to do and you're efficient at. Those are the things that can help you then refine your ICP, and then you bring in fits to roll out a marketing plan to them.
Yeah, I love that.
When you lean into a specific ideal client, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get other types of clients. All we're talking about is focusing your marketing efforts in a specific direction, because as an MSP, there aren't any MSPs that can target extremely broadly effectively. It's too expensive. It just can't be done. And even large companies that Amazon, right? You're like, oh my gosh, they target super broadly. Well, they target a broad audience, but their campaigns are very narrow. So you're going to get other leads, other referrals that aren't your ICP. You can choose whether you want to do business with them, but you got to focus your marketing efforts in a specific direction.
Yeah, I heard somebody say one time, and I don't know who it was. It was some MSP owner. He said, everywhere I go, there's 5 of the best MSPs for the local area in it. Number 1 rated Chicago MSP. He's like, and he was someone who you're talking about has kind of made that journey. He's like, it's got to be more than that. That's too broad. You're not now the number 1 MSP for healthcare providers under 50 people in Chicago. It's a better focused ICP, right?
Yeah.
Pull that back up. That was a good, I like that comment there from Jason.
Yeah.
Challenge with marketing is it can feel like a blank check expense. Any thoughts on bumpers? Yeah, let's hear the answer.
Yeah, bumpers. So this is a loaded question, Jason. Typically 5 to 15% of top line revenue. Okay. Now here's where it varies, right? Everybody's situation is slightly different, right? The more profitable you are, the more you can afford to put towards marketing. But also your goals also have an impact on that. If you want to 10x in the next 5 years, that's a totally different marketing budget than 2xing in 10. So you've got to, when you're looking at how much you need to spend for your or invest in your marketing, you need to look at, what your goals are and where you want to get to and how profitable you are to help determine that. But the reality is, over the long term, it is very important to look at marketing as an investment, not an expense. Yes, it is going to cost you money in the beginning. It's going to take time to start seeing returns, but over time, you should be seeing a return. You shouldn't be putting in $1 and getting nothing back. You should be putting in $1 and getting 2 back, 3 back, 5 back. And when you get to that place, who wouldn't keep putting in more? Like, there's not any one of us that wouldn't put in $1 to get 2 back.
Yeah, it goes back to that position. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, no, just diminishing returns, right? Like even with diminishing returns, a marketing dollar, unless it's really misplaced, like is not going to, everything's going to bring returns, right? I mean, obviously vendors, SaaS, they're pouring holes of money, right? At like certain markets to grow quickly. As you said, it's speed of growth. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Go ahead, Jesse. Yeah.
No, I think that's what I was going to say actually. So.
So we level set right up on the half-hour mark here. We kind of talked a lot about like the strategic goals of what we want to do from marketing efforts, either as an MSP or a small business, right? Big picture, all the way down into like some additional picture, like ICP, blah blah blah, and then. How do I go dig foxholes? I want to win the war. I need to educate my soldiers on how to dig foxholes. Now I want to go dig foxholes.
And on a rider on that, do you need somebody dedicated to marketing on the MSP side, even if you're using a fractional? Like, does there need to be somebody to execute that sustained front like you were talking about? So answer that, but weave that into the answer, please.
Yeah, you have to have some support.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even with the small MSP, well, frankly, in most small MSPs, the owner's still doing some of the technical stuff. So there's no way that they're going to have enough time to implement and execute on their marketing effectively. So you've got to have that help, whether you outsource things to an agency or you hire somebody internally. Honestly, I think most MSPs in the beginning, you could start with a marketing virtual assistant.
Right.
It's going to cost you, $1,500 to $2,000 a month. There is a lot of tactical activity that can get done with somebody like that. The challenge, though, again, going back to you can't manage something you don't understand. When you hire somebody like that, you have to be telling them what you need them to do.
Right.
You can't. Too many MSPs hire, hey, I'm going to hire a marketing manager. And I'm telling you, you see the job description and it's like, guys, this is a freaking unicorn. This person doesn't exist.
They don't.
So they go into the hiring process with unrealistic expectations about what they're going to get. And so before you even...
Yeah, don't you think that's because every MSP is like, I just need more leads. Give me more leads. I just want more leads, right? And so it just really turns into that, like, get me more leads, Yeah.
Well, so we could go down a huge rabbit hole here about lead gen. A lot of times they don't need more leads. They might need better lead conversion, or they might need better retention or referrals. Sometimes people are generating plenty of leads. They're just not the right. They might not be the right kind of leads, or they might not be converting and then retaining.
Talk about So I don't want to go too far down this road, but measurement. I think Jesse even said something about this recently. Like if you're not getting signal, like how do you know you're doing the right thing, or like what are some of the measure? Like how do you measure? I know there's Google Analytics and things like that.
But even that,
But is there?
So
go ahead.
Let's just keep this super simple, because there's so many marketing metrics that don't mean anything, right? At its most basic level, okay, we need to track how many leads we're generating. Second, where those leads came from, so what the lead source was. If we know how many leads we're generating and then we know the lead source, we know what activities we're taking are actually generating leads. And then we need to know how many of those we convert to new clients.
Right.
If we know the conversion rate, then we know, hey, if I want 5 new clients and my conversion rate is X, I need to generate this many leads.
Right.
Those are the base 3 metrics that I think any MSP needs to track.
So you mean MQL to SQL to close, right? Because I'm literally going, and that's way beyond most MSPs' mind, like a qualified lead and all the way through that. And I love what you're saying.
Like the reality is,
what did they do when they got here?
Well, when we talk about MQL and SQL, to me, it's just confusing people, right? And so let's just keep it simple. Leads, where they came from, and how many converted. That's it. from there, I think it is critically important to understand the lifetime value of a client.
Yep.
For you. For most MSPs, it's very high because once somebody signs, they typically don't leave.
Right.
So, but understanding the lifetime value of a client gives you a strong indication of how much you can actually pay to acquire one. Because a lot of MSPs talk about, oh, it's costing me X amount. It's costing me so much to acquire a client. Well, it's like, well, that's irrelevant unless you know what the lifetime value of a client is, because if it costs you $1,000 to acquire a client, but the lifetime value of a client is $150,000, like, who cares?
Right. And this is the interesting part, because a lot of, whether it's QuickBooks Online or it's Stripe or it's some other billing platform that you're collecting money, it gives you LTV, lifetime value. It gives you average, MRR, ARR. It gives you all that. So you have that. So you can actually be able to look, like, I know, because I track that almost hourly. I track that for myself. What is our lifetime value? We track that. And I don't have to do anything. I just have to pull up Stripe and there it is. Right. So regardless, you have that data in your platforms. Back that up to this customer lifetime value of $100,000. If I was tracking where he came from and how he closed and what I had to spend to get him from where he came from to close, now I know it's that 5 to 15% that you said earlier, or maybe it's 80 or 90%, right? That's where we can start getting into those metrics, right, Tim?
Yep.
That's what you were asking about, Schnur, right?
It's in the compliance scorecard investor deck.
That's all good. I don't need another investor deck.
No, I mean, if you're raising money, it's even more important, right, that you know those numbers. And I think the hardest thing, and I learned that really quick, like, you always have to ask a question. If you don't immediately know where the lead came from, I think just knowing where it came from and asking them directly, like, I think is, I don't know. I don't think that's like rude to ask, like, oh, where did the lead come from? No. So yeah,
it's simple too.
Yeah. And I think, and I would think that I would even say 3.5 things, right? Is making sure there's a Q in front of that L in the MQL or SQL, whatever it is, right? But it goes back to the strategy discussion and the disconnect about telling people what you need to do. So if you're running campaigns, you're having this virtual assistant do these things, and they're just setting meetings like, oh yeah, this person said they were interested in IT. Here's the meeting. Well, do we have a set of 5 questions? And I see a breakdown in this all the time. And like, even big organizations, right? Is marketing is generating, their SDRs are generating, SQL or MQLs or whatever it is. And then sales gets it and says, this is not even a client, right? Yeah. So simple things like having a list of 5 criteria to qualify a lead. And then marketing has to, whoever's setting those meetings or doing that has to qualify those 5 criteria. When it gets to sales, who knows better, right? Because that's their bread and butter, goes through those 5 and says, did they meet all 5? Well, no, they met 3 out of 5. Well, why did marketing think it met these 2 were qualified and sales thought these weren't? Let's have an open discussion around that. So that's like that RevOps piece of getting discussion going between marketing and sales and starting to build that connective tissue between those departments.
Yeah.
This is your ideal client profile. Oh, go ahead.
This is so timely because I literally just had this conversation with my sales team this morning and my marketing team right after, and bringing them all back together again this afternoon with how do we get from where did they come from and where did they go? Wait, that's a bad country song.
And Jesse, your point is spot on, because okay, great. I created this ideal client profile. It doesn't go into a desk drawer.
Right.
Like, everybody needs to have access to that. And you're just gently and relentlessly beating the drum, reminding people these are what our ideal clients look like. And it is a guide so that when you are talking to leads, whether it's at the marketing stage or the sales stage, you're looking, going, are they checking enough of these boxes? Yeah. And if they're not, it's okay to say no. Like, refer them someplace else. You're doing yourself and them a favor if they're not a good fit.
Yeah, Tim, I've been in organizations that do that well and don't do that well. You should be huddling weekly on whoever's like directing the funnel, shaping the funnel.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go, Tim. Right? I mean, that is the amount of waste that you're reducing by getting these non-technical people, non-cybersecurity people, whatever it is, that are shaping your funnel, creating your marketing materials. It's ridiculously important because it's gonna increase that hit rate. So
right, and you bring up a really good point. I want to get to some of the comments that are coming in here because they're really great. But before I do that, I just want to say, like, I have 20 years in GRC, and our marketing team has like 20 minutes, and so I spend a lot of time on what does risk mean. Like, all of us cyber geeks, all of us IT professionals kind of get it, right? But as an MSP, our customers don't know what the hell risk means. Maybe they do, maybe they do. They don't know MDR, XDR, FDR. Well, maybe they know FDR, but they don't know these things. And you know what? They probably don't care, but they do care about risk, revenue, and reputation. Yeah. And so those are the kinds of messages that we can bring forward as an MSP. How am I reducing risk, protecting their reputation, and monitoring their revenue?
Yeah.
Tim, good question. Tim G, Mike over there, target addressable market.
Total addressable market.
MR, so. This is a good question.
That one's in your slide deck. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm not picking on you, Tim. I mean, it's so Fitzy, like we're all like, new businesses, new vendors, like in the past 3 years, we've all been involved in startups to some degree. So I think this is a good question, but Golden.
Yeah, so what are thoughts on measuring and evaluating actual lifetime value in MRR versus target addressable market? I think most MSPs should forget about target addressable market. Like, they're not big enough to even worry about that. Right. Like, it's just, I think you're adding complexity where you don't need to have complexity. Like, just forget about it. Like, most MSPs are never going to reach the maximum target addressable market. Like, forget about it.
Yeah, it's usually never comes in, even with startups and even with vendors and products and MSPs. Like, as you said, like, the target addressable market of MSP is, I don't know, $5 trillion in the US or something. Like, even startups, it's like, who cares? Like, as long as it's big enough, like, I'm not like doing something ridiculously niche that it's like never gonna matter. So.
You're not going, oh my God, there's 10,000 and we need 1%. That's gonna give us X amount of clients. Like, I
did that work.
Don't do it. It's just, it's a waste of time, because the reality is, what most MSPs, 4 to 5 to 10 clients a year. I mean, if you're bigger, you may have grander plans than that. Like, you could go to any market to get 5 to 10 a year. Right. So
this is you make a really good point, right? And thanks, Craig, for bringing this up, because it's really timely in this part of the conversation. Go after the right leads, not just leads. And as you said, Fitz, like, as an MSP, I'm probably adding 5 or 6 new logos or 5 or 6 new businesses a year, which means my sales cycle is a long process, which means my marketing process is even a longer process, right? Because I'm not like a SaaS company doing a deal a day. I'm doing, as an MSP, go ahead.
No, go ahead. And I think you're right. I saw that question pop up, or like, what are the 5 questions we should be asking between our sales and marketing to qualify the leads, right? And so I would say, that depends.
It does.
Right. But what I would say,
Craig nailed it.
Yeah. Well, but I would say, even though, like, if you, I love that 90-day idea. Maybe change them every 90 days, but talk with your salespeople. Your salespeople are on the front lines, or if it's you and you're the one that needs to come up with those, I mean, you could use things like the BANT framework and then modify that BANT and add a psychology question or something like that, right? So for people that don't know BANT, it's the budget, authority, need, and time frame, I think, are the acronyms. But think about that and build some questions around that to qualify, and then maybe a psychological question or 2 based on your ICP and your psychographics. So it just maybe a place to get started with those.
I think you're spot on with that, Jesse. And I think that the psychographics, right? Their thoughts, their feelings, where they want to get to.
Right.
Those things are critically important to understand, because the psychographics, I think, more than the demographics, determine whether they're going to be a good client or not.
Yeah.
You know, like for me, for example, like, hey, I'm a marketer. Like if you think marketing doesn't work and you're convinced it's never going to work, like you're not an ideal client for me, right? That is a psychographic element that I look for when I have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give away some of the secret sauce, right? And for those of you that are watching, and those of you that, because I'm literally eyeball deep in that this week, like today, I'm gonna lean in, right? That's because what are some of the behaviors to be looking for in your ICP, right? So for us, are they based in the United States? Well, yes, I have 2 clients that are not US based, but are they in the United States? Do they have, like, literally digging through, and there's more to it than the demographic aspect of the ICP.
Right.
The next piece of that, and I think Fitz, you said that, is what's their GPS? Where are they?
Yeah.
Right. You know, there's more to than who are they demographically, who are they psychologically, where are they, right? And bringing a culmination. So, and this is like a really great exercise that I'm going through is, yeah, I know they're an MSP with 5 people that charge this, that do that, that, like, okay, that's a characteristic, a demographical characteristic.
Right.
What's the psychological characteristic behind it?
Super important, because the psychographics, that's what gets people to buy.
Yeah.
When you understand the psychographics, that's how you're going to get them to buy. The other thing that's important to understand about your ICP is what are the triggers that are even starting the buying process.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so, you know, for me, like with an MSP, it's I'm building my business off of referrals and I've hit a ceiling. I need to scale and I can't scale. Or, you know, I just got done investing 90 grand in marketing and it went nowhere.
That happened to me. I spent $50,000 on an SEO expert specifically in the MSP to do SEO and Google ads, and I spent $50,000 in 6 months and I got 0 leads.
So those are examples of triggers, right? In the MSP space, one of the triggers could be they just had a cyber attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one example of a potential trigger, but understanding those triggers will also help you identify, because if they don't have one of those triggers, are they really going to be as motivated as they should be to take the next step? So, you know, because we can't make people be motivated. They have to be motivated to move forward. The triggers will help you identify that.
Yeah, Fitz is getting us all excited over here.
So I'm gonna throw a grenade in here, and Tim's gonna hate me for this, but I think it helps. And I'm just asking. So I mean, we're basically 3 vendors. Some are more tools, some are more services, selling to MSPs, right? And I think that's a lot of the time, like, the messaging falls flat, right? Because you have to teach an MSP to make money with your services or tools, right? And Fitz, we talked about this a little bit, and love your recommendations here on, you know, just the 3 vendors here, or potential vendors, either tools or services, that are providing utilities to an MSP, or, like, you know, an outsourced security provider. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And as you said, the psychographics, getting in there. We see this all the time, right? Like, people are trying to sell MDR, FDR, Tim Golden, right? XDR, right? Like, and that's great, like selling to the MSP, but, like, how do you think about getting in the MSP mindset and thinking, of the vendors out there at IT Nation, I am going to go talk to that guy. I'm going to talk to that tool, because I think that can resonate with my customers, right? Like, kind of this intermediary channel. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And, like I said, just shifting gears, really kind of the vendors here, because ultimately vendors are going to, you know, take those, you know, those are the things that the MSP is going to serve. So, yeah.
So the common stumbling blocks I see with vendors selling to MSPs is they default to, you know, thinking that they need to teach the MSP how to sell what they actually do. and a lot of the collateral materials, the sales and marketing enablement materials the vendors provide to MSPs are all about, here's how you sell my stuff. That's not how MSPs sell, right?
Nope.
When the MSP sells to a client, they're selling themselves. The client is buying the MSP, not Microsoft or Amazon Web Services or whatever the heck it might be. They're buying the MSP, right? And so as a vendor, there are a couple things that vendors need to think about, because if you're going to help an MSP from a sales and a marketing enablement standpoint, you need to help them run a better business. If they can run a better business and grow,
right,
you're going to grow, because the more they grow, the more they're going to buy.
Yeah.
But the second thing is, if you're a vendor and you're selling to an MSP, you need to communicate to the MSP why they want to buy your stuff. That's not necessarily always a technical thing, right? Because when I think about marketing messaging, I didn't come up with this. Dove Gordon said this to me once. He said, look, when we're communicating what we do, we need to focus on the problems our clients have and don't want, and the results they want and don't have.
Yeah.
Too many of us, vendors included, are talking about, buy my stuff because of all of these great features that we have. MSPs aren't buying it for the features. They're buying it for what it can do for their business.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to help them, is it going to help them be more efficient? Is it going to reduce headaches that they have? Is it going to save them time? Is it going to help make them money? How is it going to do that? We need to get them to buy into that first and foremost. So does that help?
Yeah. Well, so I love Craig's comment there, because I want to wrap that all up of what you've talked about, and basically what we talked about in our hour here, and say, okay, you know that feeling when a vendor comes to you with a Nerf bullet and calls it a silver bullet? Don't do that to your clients either. It's the same message. So I love that. I know we're running out of time here.
There is no silver bullet. Period. I don't care if we're talking about marketing or anything. Silver bullets, easy buttons in life and business they don't exist. So
They don't.
Just get that out of our heads.
Let's take the last 3 to 5 minutes, because we always end with something, a key takeaway. Let's spend last couple of minutes here on what Jesse just said, and that is using the material that we're given, right? Talking about the Nerf bullet, the magic button, right? The easy pill, compliance in a box, vCISO click button stuff, marketing, one-click marketing stuff. Let's spend a couple seconds on that.
I will just say that here's my one takeaway for that. I own the domain on a whim, both Easy Button Cyber and cybereasybutton.com. And I don't know that I'll ever use them. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but I'm like, I don't know about that.
We've covered a lot of ground. By the way, this has been super fun. So thank you for having me. I would say the simplest place for most MSPs to start is by just going back to what we touched on with 3 power questions, and just have some conversations with your ideal clients that are checking all 3 of those boxes, just to find out, God, how did they go about the buying process? How did they find you? Who did they talk to? Where did they do research? Why did they buy from you? Why do they continue to buy from you? All of that information, you're going to hear it in their own words. They're going to say stuff to you and you're going to go, why did I not see that? Well, it's because we don't think objectively about our business, because we're too close to the fire. And you're going to get invaluable information. If that's the one thing you do from this conversation we've had, I guarantee you will get tons of valuable stuff from it. And you'll get a lot of great takeaways that you can use to craft a message that's going to help differentiate you.
Awesome.
I'll go. And then we're on the way here. So Robert Gillette, we had him on 2 weeks ago. Great comment when you're in a sales conversation. It's you, the seller, and the prospect working on the customer's problem, right? So I think I think that resonates here, that same message. But also, you as the salesperson, or, maybe you're, a leader or owner of the firm, like those marketing people need to understand. I'm glad we covered that. And Tim talked about having that meeting 3 times a week. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important as well. And it's, at the end of the day, it's about making yourself useful, right? And letting others know that you're useful, and somehow, finding that, as you said, that value across an ICP, because ICPs scale. You can reuse some of that knowledge in the past. So,
all right. So 5 minutes left. 1 minute, one takeaway.
That's
Jesse.
my takeaway. I'm done, Tim. So you got 2 minutes.
All right. So, all right, Jesse. 1 minute, one takeaway.
Yeah.
I'm going to reiterate my takeaway and say, when a vendor comes to you and calls their Nerf bullet a silver bullet, that feels pretty dirty, right? So don't make your clients feel the same way. Make sure you understand your clients. Make sure you're messaging appropriately, and you'll see the results there.
Oh, so stealing Craig's. Okay, I get it. I see how that works.
I like it. Hey, nice.
Yeah, perfect. All right. So, Fitz, one key takeaway. You can get them more than a minute.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'll just keep it simple. Strategy before tactics. Like, don't just immediately jump into action without having a foundation and a plan, because you're going to waste time and money if you do that, and it happens all the time. So, strategy before tactics.
And I'll kind of wrap us up, and then Mr. Schnurr can tell us what's coming up for next week. I'll wrap us up with strategy, right? We're techies. We dig foxholes. We need the general. We need somebody at the top of the organization, somebody with the vision and the guidance to understand, what are we doing? Who is our message? How do we get there? Well, maybe we inventory and we do an operational audit of our own MSP, and we look for commonalities across our MSP. Wow, we really love working with these 5 clients. Why? Oh, because, this one we talk about HIPAA, and this one we talk about biometrics, and this one we talk about, their laboratory. Okay, there's a theme there. They're all healthcare. And the things that, like, for the strategy, the big vision is, we want to land X number of net new customers, maybe 5 to 10 logos a year. And we are looking at our existing client base, kind of doing that analysis to figure out, wow, we work really well with biotech companies. And you know what? These biotech startups that are here in the Boston area, there's thousands of them, and they have money. And they want to and are able to do the things. And we love working with them. Yeah. So interview your existing customers and think about what you like to do, where they are, find the commonalities. And now, as Jesse always says, you have the start of your ICP.
There you go.
Right? And then you take that a step further and a step further. And before you know it, you're digging foxholes and trapping in the enemy. I'm sorry. That's probably a bad analogy. But you get where I'm going. So, Mr. Schnurr, unless somebody else has something else.
Yeah, no, Tim Fitzpatrick, thank you very much. This was a great conversation. Next week, Jimmy Hatzel, right? No one does a better job than Jimmy at breaking down very complex problems or tools, and he's going to be talking about his hopefully a little bit about AI and his new startup, which I think is very exciting, right? So Jimmy, as I said, if you've watched some of his videos talking about PAM, privileged access management, identity access management, right? These aren't simple things. So he's taking on another big challenge here in helping MSPs do some scalable automation and AI. So excited to have that one next week, 2:00, same place. No gates, right? Anyone could jump on here. We're not asking for your email or anything. It's Team Tim Live.
You're muted.
You're on mute. He wants the last word. He's on mute.
No one really wants to listen to me anyways while my mouth is popping. So anyways, you all have a good week. There's storms coming across the U.S. Be safe. Make sure you clear the snow out from all of your vent pipes and your furnaces, because I had to go and deal with my neighbor who didn't do that, and it would have been disastrous. So stay safe, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next week.
Subscribe now.